Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Mount and Blade Bannerlord and we're going to be going through the Kingdom of Vlandia and their strengths and weaknesses in this game. So for one thing I just want to cover right away, a lot of people are going to say, well, the strengths and weaknesses don't matter, all the factions are similar enough, blah 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 blah. Well, to that I say then your difficulty isn't set high enough, because there are strengths and weaknesses to every faction, and especially if you roleplay, whereas like if you're playing as a Vlandian, you only use Vlandian troops, then of course it makes a difference, and I definitely recommend playing that way because it makes the game a lot more fun. And of course, makes you learn new strategies. So it's definitely how the game is intended to be played, and I definitely recommend to give it a try if you haven't. And like I said, if it still is too easy and it seems like there's no difference, then turn your difficulty up. Eventually it will feel like there's a difference. But anyway, so we're going to be looking at the Vlandian territory, which as you can see is this kind of western section here. So all the way over to Sargat, up along this mountain chain, which divides it from the Battanian territory, and up on the edge. It's the whole western chunk of the map here, and it's probably my favorite faction overall. So just the little in-game description, which I like to start with, says the Vlandian monarchy descends from Osric Ironarm, a warlord who seized the western coast of the empire and was recognized as king by the emperor as the price of peace. He in turn recognized his lieutenants as barons and counts, granting them suzerainty over their lands in exchange for rallying to his banner in war. Some Vlandian kings have sought to expand the powers of the kingship, others have allowed the barons to feud among themselves so long as the money and manpower was there when they needed it. Pseudo sorta Norman is kind of the vibe I like to go with the Vlandians. That type of influence on them, and they're focused primarily on heavy cavalry and stuff. So let's just start off with strengths, and we'll start with the troops section in strengths. Alright, and so we'll start off with cavalry, of course, and the obvious place to start is with the vanguard. So one of the strengths of Vlandia is their heavy cavalry, and they have two different trees, both of which have some of the best cavalry in the game. Their basic troop tree, making it the one that you'll most commonly be able to amass in large numbers, will come from your recruits, and if you follow the right path all the way down and you have war horses to upgrade them, you can get to the Vlandian vanguards, which are some of the best heavy shot cavalry in the game. They've got nice long lances that they can couch, which is unique to Vlandian stuff. They have riding of 130, polearm of 130, one-handed of 130, athletics of 60, so a little bit lower, but you know, in line for cavalry. They're a ridiculously good troop. Their horses are very well armored. They're very well armored. They work as infantry troops as well. They do have slightly lower athletics than I would like, but they still work as infantry, so they're one of the best cavalry units in the game and one of the best troops overall in the game. Then while we're on the topic of heavy cavalry, we of course have the best heavy cavalry in the game, the Vlandian Banner Knight. And now these ones are a little bit less common because they come from the noble troop tree, so you have to find Vlandian squires, but once you do and you have the time and money to upgrade them, you can all the way to Vlandian Banner Knights, which like I said are the best knights in the game, beating out the Imperial Elite Cataphracts by a significant margin. They've got excellent heavy armor, their horses are very well armored, their stats are excellent, so you can see 200 riding, 260 for polearms, and 220 for one-handed. Athletics is the same as the vanguards though. So these ones again make the best cavalry, at least shock cavalry in the game, and also make pretty good infantry. So as far as strengths, especially under the troop umbrella, the heavy cavalry is a huge strength for them. Another troop strength comes from the Vlandian Vulgaire, which is one of, if not the best, two-handed infantry units in the game. They're if you can see these ones come from the recruit as well, and you follow down through this path all the way to the Vulgaire. They are excellent troops. They work really well as shock infantry in the open field. They work really well as anti-cavalry support for other infantry and archer units. You can see stat-wise, we've got polearm of 130, two-handed of 130, athletics of 130, so they can move really well. They're very well armored. They have throwing axes, which are nice, and they have a decently high throwing stat for an infantry units because they have 80. But they're an excellent troop, some of the best infantry in the game, and like I said, I usually rate them at #1 for two-handed infantry, so infantry units that don't use shields. So that is another troop strength that you have, is this excellent infantry unit. And of course, you can't forget about the Vlandian sharpshooter as quite the strength. They are one of, if not the best crossbowmen in the game, and now the only ones better are a mercenary unit, so they're harder to get in great numbers. So most people would count the Vlandian sharpshooters as the best crossbow ranged unit in the game. For one thing, they do have the best crossbow in the game. They are pretty dang well armored. They have a nice big shield which helps protect them from infantry and other archers, and as well as mounted cavalry and everything. So a lot of people building a Vlandian army will center it around a large number of sharpshooters. The other major advantage of them is it does not take a lot of money or XP to upgrade from the Vlandian recruit all the way down to the sharpshooter, so it's really easy to have a large amount of these guys. So it's a real strength. Obviously the strength of crossbows over regular bow archers is all about range and impact power. The bolts do a lot of damage, and they've got the best range in the game. They can outrange the fine champions. That's the advantage of crossbows. Obviously, the disadvantage is less ammo and a much slower firing rate. I consider the Vlandian sharpshooters to be a strength for Vlandia. And then the other strength just comes from the fact that Vlandian Infantry in general, once you get them up to at least tier 4, all of them have access to polearms, which makes them a much less weak to cavalry than most factions' infantry. So you can see the billmen, not the swordsmen, but the billmen, the Volgear, the pikeman, which specializes in anti-cavalry, and even the sergeant. All of them have polearms, which makes them way, way more effective against cavalry. So that is another strength. So now we'll go into some of the troop weaknesses for Vlandia. So the first one to pop up is they have absolutely no mounted archers. So they do not have the ability to have archers that are super mobile in the field. This is something that will oftentimes put you at a disadvantage when you're fighting against the Empire, the Khuzaits, or the Aserai as Vlandia. Now, mind you, like I said, this can be countered, but it is a weakness, and it really limits your open field skirmishing ability. The other cavalry-based weakness that they have, considering that cavalry is one of their greatest strengths, is actually that their light cavalry are very poorly armored, as well as their horses, and this leads to decently high attrition. So until you get them up to the Vlandian Vanguard, or mostly for this, because the Banner Knight, a couple of troops earlier I'll show you, but they've got decent armor on the horses. But the Vlandian light cavalry and the Vlandian cavalry in general, the people aren't super well armored and the horses aren't super well armored, so they go down decently easy, and you see high attrition on them unless you keep them out of the battlefield. So what I normally recommend to people is to try to keep all of your light cavalry and Vlandian cavalry in your back pocket until you get them up to the point where they're nice and high level, otherwise you are going to see high attrition on them. So it can take a while to get an entire army of vanguards. It's not as bad for the noble troop tree, because I would say once you get past the Vlandian Gallant, they get pretty good. They have decent armor and the horses are decently armored, so you see much less attrition on them. But it is a weakness that their light cavalry goes down as easy as they do. The other weakness they have is, although I think the Vlandian sharpshooters, their crossbowmen, are very, very good and can work excellently, they don't have any traditional archers, which can be a problem, especially against really large numbers of infantry, because your crossbowmen are going to run out of ammo and their fire rate is much slower. So if you've got too many infantry coming at you, they're going to overwhelm your archers before they're able to work totally effectively. So you have to use them very strategically, otherwise this is a weakness that will be exploited by enemy cavalry and infantry. So like I said, the crossbowmen are great if you use them correctly, but not having traditional bowmen is a weakness. And then the other thing is just the last weakness I have regarding troops is just that many of the troop types lack extra equipment like throwing weapons. So in a lot of different factions you'll have, so you can see the Volgear has throwing weapons, but a lot of them don't. So if you go around and look, a lot of them are missing that, and like the sharpshooters only have the one quiver of bolts. Those are things that limit them in effectiveness. That means they have empty weapon slots that aren't being utilized. Whereas you'll have other factions that'll, if they've got an archer, they'll have 2 quivers standard, or if all of their infantry are equipped with throwing axes or javelins or something like that. It makes them more versatile, whereas the Vlandian troops are very, very specialized, and so they don't have all those extra weapons. It's one of the things that makes the Volgears one of my favorite Vlandian troops, is that they actually do have that. But so I see it as a weakness that a lot of the troops you have in Vlandia don't have those secondary weapons. Now, as far as some general strengths go, it is an economically balanced region, so if you're, especially like I said, on high difficulty, where you're going to be spending a lot of your time, especially initially, in the Vlandian region, if you decide to be with them, it is economically balanced. Most of the towns are pretty well off. You can find a wide variety of products at all of the major settlements. It makes it easy to flourish economically through trade. Another strength is that they really only have this one border, and most of it is protected by the mountain chain between them and Britannia. Your only crossings up here in the northern section of the border are right here past Ormondfard Castle, and if they kind of get up to here, but then they have to come down and around. So you get a crossing there, and then just this crossing over here by the Empire. So you don't really have to worry about your enemies coming in from all around you, because you just have the one border. Another advantage is the excellent armor that the Vlandians have. The Vlandian armor is pretty much the best armor in the game. My favorite main piece of armor is the Brigandine Overmail, and it's a Vlandian piece. So, and with that, you also get some of the best helmets in the game that give you the best protection and all that stuff. So I know that's a general one, and anybody can use any armor, but if you're trying to roleplay and stick to that, you know, one faction vibe, then the Vlandian armor is some of the best heavy armor in the game. game. And if you're going just by controlled areas, the Vlandians do start with the most controlled areas, so towns, settlements, and castles. Vlandia has the most. Obviously, if you count all 3 factions of the Empire together, then they would have the most. But you can't, because they're 3 separate factions, so Vlandia does actually start being the biggest and most powerful. As for weaknesses, there's really only 2 general weaknesses to the Vlandian kingdom. One is that you're actually short on horses, which is ironic for a kingdom where heavy cavalry is your biggest strength. And so there's only 3 horse farms in the entire region. You see we have one at Horsker, one over at Valenby, and then this one way down here in the south at Savinth. And that's the supply of horses for the entire region, so they can get limited, and because of that, the horses that are generally available over here, which are the Saddle Horse and Vlandian Courser, are kind of expensive, so if you're using them to upgrade your troops, especially to the Vlandian Vanguard, it will cost you decent money. So a lot of times when I'm playing as a Vlandian, I'll take trading trips where I grab resources from here that are in high demand over in like the Khuzait territory, and I'll ride over there and sell them all and buy as many horses as I can. But so as a general weakness, you are low on horse supply in the general region. And so as far as strategies for Vlandians go, the best way that I have found, as far as combat strategies I should say go, the best one I found is the defense and counter offense. So Vlandia has very strong defensive troops, and then you can use them in a counter-offensive, but they're not generally great as the aggressive offense. So generally speaking, the way that I'll set them up, like I said, of course, this is when we're talking about an appropriate difficulty level, not easy where you can just F1, F3 everything and win. But generally what I'll do is I'll have a 3-line defensive, the first line being pikemen and or Volgiars, depending on the mix I like to do, because like I said, the Volgiars are overall better troops than the pikemen, but the pikemen are really, really effective against cavalry when you're using them in defensive formation, because they've got those nice long pikes. But so that's the first line. Then the line behind them is another line of infantry. I like to do just sergeants if I've got enough of them, because they're the best anti-infantry and anti-archer infantry. But if not, I'll do a mix of sergeants and Volgiars. So the first line is the Volgiars and pikemen, second line is the sergeants, and again, if you can, more Volgiars. And then your third line is sharpshooters. And if you can, I like to get them on an elevated ground. And so that's your 3 lines. And then after that, you'll have shot cavalry, which preferably will be a lot, because they are probably the most powerful troop in the entire Vlandian arsenal. So banner knights and vanguards, as many as you can have. So the mix I'll generally do for this is like 50% shot cavalry, 40 to 50%, and then 30% sharpshooters, so a nice big batch of your sharpshooters, and I'll put those in a loose formation in the back. And then 20% of mixed infantry for your first 2 lines. And I find that that mix and that general strategy works really well. And so you have your 3 lines for your main defense, and that draws the troops in, and you set your cavalry up over to the side somewhere on a flank, and then you do controlled charges. So you'll have your cavalry charge, decimate as many as they can. As soon as it starts to slow down and kills, you have all of your troops, all of your cavalry regroup back at the spot that you had them before, or some other spot, and then the enemy will focus again on your infantry formation, and as soon as your cavalry is reset, then you charge them again. I find that that works extremely well. The defense, because of the really strong heavily armored infantry and the excellent crossbowmen, which can deal heavy damage from very long ranges, I find that that strategy works basically 100% of the time in the open field. As far as siege strategy, again, you're going to want to have a mix of sergeants, Volgiars, and sharpshooters for defense on a castle, and for an assault, all of them work. The cavalry obviously are ones that I leave out of assaults because they're too valuable to lose, and the regular infantry are going to fare better in it, and for that you're just going to want to focus on sharpshooters and sergeants if you can. But that is the whole combat strategy for Vlandia, and that ends our video. So hopefully I kept the video nice and short. I didn't want it to be as long as the troop videos I was making, but that is a general overview. So if you want to play a heavy cavalry focused game with some emphasis on decently heavy infantry and excellent crossbowmen, then Vlandia is the faction for you. But that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, but we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.